Hello. All right. 12:44. I'm going to give it another minute. So whoever is interested can come on live. If you're here, say something. Tell me who you are and if we know each other. Also tell me if you can hear me properly, please, because this is the first time I'm doing this and I have no idea what the sound quality is like. All right, I see 4 people. Yeah. Type me something. Let me know who's there because this is terrifying. This is the first time I'm doing this, and I'm so excited to be doing it because I just love to teach. Hi, Monica. Yay! I love to teach, and the last 2 weeks have been very different than usual. From a full 30 some hours a week schedule to almost nothing. So that kind of depresses me a bit. But I taught 2 people this morning and it reconnected me to the feeling of, hey, we can do this. I love to teach. I love to help people. I cannot see you. I can see that you're there, but so far I can see what you're saying, Monica. So I'm so happy you're here. So, and the best thing about this whole thing is that I'm connecting again to clients and friends from the East Coast that I haven't connected with in 5 years. So for that, I'm loving this. So yeah, with no further hesitation, let's get into this. So I'm going to see how I can do this. We'll start off standing upright because it's what we really want to do is today is a bit of a focus on hamstrings. And because I had a new client before this whole thing went down about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, and he talked about his hamstrings, and he has tight hamstrings, and he's stretching his hamstrings, and he still has tight hamstrings. So I would love to put a little message out there about you guys and your hamstrings, and that it's not really all about the stretchy hamstrings that we want and about, I don't know, touching the floor or being the most limber and flexible that you can be. It's really about how functional your hamstrings are and how strong your hamstrings are. So I want to start out with standing up. And I don't know, you'll see me on my side. Actually, just if you can, just stand up on your mat. And I want to just, don't look at me right now necessarily. I just want you to stand upright as if you would normally stand upright. And then I would love for you to take a look down onto your feet. And if your feet are turned out, that's the first signal that something is up. That relates more probably to your hips than to your hamstrings, but it's important to notice these things. So don't change a thing right now. Just standing upright and checking in with your feet. So let's say they possibly are turned out, or maybe one is even more turned out than the other. Now I want you to pay attention. Are you weight bearing into both feet at the same rate? So maybe you're standing more weighted on one foot than the other. Just take notice of it. It's nothing, we're not correcting anything yet. The next thing, I'm going to turn to the side here because I want to show you my hyperextended knees. So just checking in again with yourself. Don't change a bit. But where are you feeling this physically in your body if you're standing upright? And I'm not saying this is a big sensation necessarily, but just kind of where is pressure? If I stand like this, I can feel right now that my knees are quite active here, and I'm trying my best to show you my best hyperextension in the knee, and I can feel my lower back. Yeah, just a little funky, no pain or anything. But if we really look at standing upright, hyperextending the knees and pushing the hip forward and then leaning back on the upper body part, we're creating quite a bit of tension here, right around the diaphragm, maybe a little lower where the kidneys are, maybe higher where kind of the bra strap area would be. And then, and I'll have to come down to show you, as I do this, as my neck and my head have to compensate. So my head is kind of oriented over my upper body again. So this is just to take notice. And if you are standing like this right now, there might be a chance that you do this a lot. And I would like to just create awareness, because standing like this will do your hamstrings no favor. It's gonna really mess with your quads. It's gonna really have your quads be very tight here, because they're holding you, preventing you from falling, because you're not supported with the rest of your lower body. So anyway, so let's change this a bit. I just want you to try and turn your legs slightly inward. And then bending the knees a little bit and sticking your butt out a little bit. And please stay with me and don't worry about, yes, you're going to feel your head coming forward. Yes, you're going to feel terribly rounded in your upper back, and your arms are hanging quite in front of your body. So we're going from here to here. And really thinking about, you can put your hands on your hips here, really thinking about sticking your butt back here, slightly back. Might not be so easy to do, but just kind of going back into your, that's how I stand. And then sticking your butt out, bending your knees, and dropping your ribs a little bit. And just check in and feel what's changed from the previous checking in. Are my knees still tense or even possibly hurting? How much engagement do you have in your feet? How much possible engagement do you have in your whole leg? And maybe even if you go a little higher, is there some little engagement happening in your belly? So if we stand like this all day, and I'm exaggerating a bit here, my belly actually cannot work. My ribs are too far away from my hip bones. My obliques have a really hard time keeping my ribs contained and connected. So as you bend the knees and stick your butt out and send the diaphragm a little bit back, diaphragm, middle back, T12, kidney area, kind of that area that wants to push forward, especially when we're under stress. It's kind of nice to just breathing a little back into that diaphragm. All right, so what we're gonna do is just to start out, and we'll go back there in the very end. You're going to bend your knees. You're going to widen your heels. So we're creating an internal rotation in your legs. So the knees go slightly inward. We're pigeon toeing. Pigeon toe is the new black. Do it more often. Slowly bending the knees and then slowly rounding yourself down. And this is not about touching the floor, but this is how far can you actually bend your knees. Check in with your neck, check in with your head. If your head is looking down to the floor, if you're looking down to the floor, you're probably using your neck too much. So you definitely want to focus your gaze between your legs. My neck is long, especially the back of my neck is hanging up. Now, if your hands touch the floor, knees can be very bent. This is not about stretching your hamstrings. I don't want you to actually feel your hamstrings right now much. So just using your hands, and then gently just take your hands off the floor. And feel how the engagement in the back of the leg changes. You're going to put your hands down on the floor. You can bend your knees a lot.
press your hands down into the floor, so as if all limbs would carry the same weight. Head is still heavy, and then take your hands off the floor. And at this point, you should feel there is some engagement in the backs of the legs. One more time, you're going to push your hands down into the floor, maybe even shifting a little more weight into your hands. Head is heavy, neck is long, and then take your hands off the floor. And now slowly, and this is really important, we don't want to spin out, breathe. Keep dropping your head and neck, and you're going to push your feet down into the floor and see if you can just come on all the way up. And all the way up, I mean with a slight bend in your knees. We're going to do this one more time. My sits bones come back. My knees bend. My legs are internally rotated. My head is heavy. My arms just dangle. I try not to hold anything in my shoulders here. My knees bend a lot. And I'm going to press into my hands, really bend your knees. Actually, the further down you can go, the more fun this becomes, actually. It's not about a stretch. If you find a stretch, and this is going to go throughout the whole class. Lift your hands, and put your hands back down. If you feel a stretchy sensation in your leg, you have to strengthen your muscle more. Up and feel how that wakes up the backs of the legs, and push your hands down into the floor. And then slowly, we're keeping the knees bent. The first thing the body might want to do is this, straighten your legs. But where does that go? That goes right into your knees again, and your hamstrings are shut out of this. We're going to slowly, the hamstrings help bend your knee. So by keeping the knees bent, you're actually talking to your hamstrings. And then at the same time, we're going to keep the diaphragm back. We're going to keep the sits bones slightly back. We're going to come all the way up, back to this kind of weird ape stance. All right, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to lie on your back, and I hope you all have a strap or a belt or a scarf close by, because we want to facilitate a little bit of a drop of the thigh bone into the hip socket. So one thing that happens a lot when we sit a lot, could be the car, office, chair. Cars are actually pretty bad on that one. But dining chair, I don't know, sofa, we just sit. And what happens, the thigh bone gets pushed up into the hip joint. So, and it gets pulled out of the hip joint. And when I say that, it's not an inch or half an inch. It could be less than that. But any time the bones are not having ideal connection, the nervous system kind of freaks out because it tries to keep us safe and it tries to keep everything together like we do. It's trying to keep it together. We're trying to approximate the joint a little bit. We're trying to have the thigh bone be really heavy in the hip socket. And that's going to be a big thing we're going to do today, having the thigh bone connected in the hip socket. So as I said, as we sit, the thigh bone gets pushed up into the joint and it gets pulled out of the joint slightly. Chairs, again, doing that. And if we sit a lot like this, and if you stood this way when we were first checking, there is a big chance that you're sitting like this on your chair. Don't have a chair here, but I guess you get that picture. Is that the thigh bone gets actually pushed too far medially into the hip joint. The hip joint is a round joint. It's a very round ball and socket, and we have incredible amounts of ability to move the leg around, and ideally should be moving it fairly freely and effortlessly and round. But if there's a point where it's not moving round, there could be more degeneration, there's more usage on one part of the hip,
And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to move it all to an equal amount. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna help drop that thigh bone into the hip socket a bit. So you take your strap or your belt, anything that just gives you a little support. I'm gonna start with my left leg here so you can see that. You're gonna lie on your back and hopefully you have a little something, maybe a pillow or a sweater, or I have a towel here that I can just put underneath my head just to kind of make it a little more comfortable for me. So you're gonna put the strap right underneath your knee in the back of your leg, and you're gonna lower your foot down. Both knees are bent, and all we're gonna do is just check in for the moment, trying to breathe into the pelvis, breathing into the rib cage. And if you do not know what Pilates is, if you've never done Pilates, Pilates is a lot about, and this is all Pilates based. I'm not claiming this is a traditional Pilates mat workout. Is stability. And we're trying to create stability first and foremost in the hip and the pelvis. So as I lift this leg up, and this leg is hanging in the sling of my strap, I'm trying to not let my hip move. And the first thing that wants to probably happen is that your pelvis is rolling towards you. We call this also tuck or 12 o'clock, or that the hip wants to hike up out to the side. So what we want to do is we want to keep the pelvis a little bit. I feel like I'm sticking my butt out. And this is also the whole, stick your butt out. It's like that's the next new black. That's the new gray. Stick your butt out, bend your knees. So I'm going to stick the butt out a little bit and maintain that as I pick up my leg. So my arms bend and they pick up my leg. And as I pick that leg up, there's no effort here in the front of the hip yet. I am just dropping that thigh bone down into the socket. I am visualizing that my thigh bone can come deeper into the hip joint. You can slowly release. You might feel this quite a bit in your arms, and that would be good. Like really letting that thigh bone drop. You can even gently press on top of that knee, just a little bit. Just again, we're just looking to connect thigh bone and hip bone in a much deeper way. All right, now we're gonna do little circles. And just really, it's your arms. If your hip moves a little bit here, okay, just try not to do kind of this one. We don't want to move the whole body. We're really just looking to move the thigh. Slowly turning the leg. And then the other direction. And with every turn that I make here, I am again visualizing, I'm expecting that thigh bone to drop a little bit more. So why we're doing this, if the thigh bone is pulled out of the socket, that talks to your muscles. So if your nervous system senses, oh, there is too much space in a joint, and that could be, I'm sprained my ankle, or I dislocated my shoulder in the worst case scenario. A little bit of a thigh bone out of the socket will still alert your nervous system. And what it does is it fires muscles around the joint to keep turning, I'm gonna keep talking, to hold and to create stability in that joint and to create that drop that we need for it to feel safe. So if your leg is perpetually pulled out of the socket, guess what? Your muscles around that joint are perpetually working. That could be your quads, that could be your hamstrings, that could be your hip flexor, whatever your body feels like wanting to do. So let's slowly lower that leg down. And I want you to just straighten this leg, then straighten the other leg, the non-working leg, and just kind of check in.
What I can significantly feel here is actually a release and elongation on my left side. My whole pelvis is a little bit more connected to the ground. My lower back on the left side is more released. And I would say if I close my eyes, my left leg feels slightly longer than my right leg. Quite bizarre since we dropped it into the socket. But what happened is we released without stretching the muscles around the joint so my leg can lay down a little bit better and has a better connection in the joint. All right, let's do the other side. So right leg, I'm trying to keep my pelvis very stable. Again, I'm finding a little bit that butt sticking out. Now, I didn't mention that on the first side, but if butt sticking out means your ribs are lifting really up, hope you can see that, you got to work harder on your obliques. So butt sticking out does not mean my spine lifts all the way up, right? Pelvis and spine can do two different things. Sometimes they do, and it's not a good thing, and sometimes they don't, it's not a good thing. But for right now, I want to just say, okay, I'm going to send my sits bones away. I'm tilting my soup bowl away from me. And at the same time, I'm going to soften my ribs down to the mat as much as possible. It's not about pushing anything because that's affecting my shoulders, not in a great way, or my head, right? So this is why we have this little pillow. You want to make sure that your neck is not overstretched here. All right, so here we go. My sits bones are heavy. I'm going to stabilize. I'm going to not let my pelvis move. My lower back is slightly lifted off the mat, and I'm doing these little thigh lifts. I'm dropping the thigh bone down into the hip socket. Every time my arms pick up this lift, I'm dropping it. You can inhale to lower the leg and exhale to lift the leg. We'll do two more. Inhale to lower the leg. Exhale to lift the leg. And one more time. Now we're going to keep the leg up. My knee is right on top of my hip socket. Again, too far is going to talk to my pelvis too much. I do not want to tuck my pelvis here. Want to keep my pelvic bowl neutral, or when in doubt, a slight bit of a forward anterior tilt here. And here I'm going, and I'm going to circle my thigh bone in the hip socket. Tiny circles. One of my teachers and friends, mentors would always say, make guacamole in that joint. I like that idea. I like guacamole. So if you think about a mortar and pestle, you're smushing the avocado. You're smushing, you're moving the fluid in your hip joint around, checking in with your foot, trying to relax the foot where it's reverse direction. The shin has nothing to do with this. All we're doing is smushing avocado in your hip. And with every turn you take, your hip joint gets more lubricated. Your thigh bone gets closer. The fluid can push around. We can talk to the cartilage. We can talk to all of the bones. And they inform each other. So they really need that. And bone working on bone in a proper way grows better bone. And then slowly lower the leg down. You can take the strap away for a moment. And then straighten both legs and just see. Yeah, hopefully both legs feel evenly long. My lower back feels way better. It's more connected, or it's just hanging down to the floor in a much better way. Okay. All right, so I just want to see what's going on. Anybody has any questions? You can type me a question. If you feel anything that doesn't feel right, just, type it.
or if you can give me a thumbs up if everything's going well, and then we go into the next exercise. I'm going to wait just a little bit, see if there's anything coming in. Looks like we're all doing okay. All right, so let's, we're going to go ahead and we'll do a little bit of bridging. So we talked to the hamstrings. And one of my favorite hamstring exercises is definitely a bridge. And, you know, we call it glute bridge sometimes. Oh, there's this. Hi. Oh my God, I got a smiley face and I think I know who that is. Tell me, write down your name, please. I need to know if I know that this is who I think it is. Anyway, so you're going to lie on your back. So if you had a towel underneath your head, you can take it away. Oh my God, it's Elaine. Hi, Elaine. Nice to see you. All right. So you're gonna put a towel. So if you had a towel, but your head is fairly in a good place without a towel, fairly in a good place, meaning you're not doing this one here. You know, and if we are kyphotic, which means a little bit more rounded in our upper back as a structural thing, I would definitely recommend a little towel underneath your head. We're not going to go into a super high bridge, so I don't think it would be a problem if you kept it. But I want to warn you, we do not want to have the head lifted in a crazy amount and then lift the pelvis up. That will not really, your neck will not like that. So just warning, again, a tiny bit of a pillow is fine. And then you're going to put your hands down by your side. Our knees are bent now again. Feet are flat on the mat and they are about hip bone distance apart. And if you palpate, if you put your hands to your hip bones here and come a little bit more towards your navel where the bone ends, that's where your thigh bone inserts into the hip socket. It's not out here. It's fairly close to your sacrum, actually. Your knees and your second and third toes should be in that same line. And for most of us, if you put your feet all the way together and then just go heel toe, separating the heels, separating your toes out, you should be in a good spot here. It's not wide. It's definitely not mat distance. So we will go there eventually, probably. Anyway, so heel toe out, hands go down by your side. Let's practice a little bit of back line engagement, back chain engagement. You're going to pull your feet down into the floor and you're going to drop your sits bones away, anterior tilt. Soup goes towards your heels, 6 o'clock, forward, stick your butt out, all those. And then at the same time, we're going to soften the kidneys a little bit down into the mat. And notice how that tucks your pelvis, probably, possibly. So we want to not tuck the pelvis. We want to keep the sits bones heavy and make the kidneys heavy. And that should, with the pulling down of the feet into the mat, already start to fire up your legs. And that's a good thing. So we're going to now pull the feet into the mat. We're going to drop the sits bones away. We're going to drop the kidneys, bra strap, diaphragm heavy. And then we're going to slide the shoulders slightly down towards the heel. So at this point, your hamstrings should be definitely talking to you. If they don't talk to you, if you feel this in your quads, stick your butt out more and pull the heels a little bit more towards your shoulders. And by pulling them, it's not a movement, it's an isometric contraction. So your feet are not walking in, they're staying where they are, but you are attempting to pull as if you were pulling the mat to your shoulders and the shoulders down to your heels. And that should give you engagement. And now with that engagement, you're going to slowly pick up your pelvis. Now, one thing that might want to happen is a tuck.
So the pelvis, the soup bowl wants to spill towards your face. Try not to do that. Let the sits bones be heavy. Pull the feet towards your shoulders and your shoulders towards your feet, making sure your knees are turning slightly in. Your thigh bones are internally rotating towards the mat, and your big toes are very heavy. Softening the diaphragm and the rib cage back. You're hanging your ribs into a hammock. We don't want to lead this thing with the ribs. And lower down. If your pelvis lifted quite a bit up off the floor, something's up. Your pelvis should barely be lifting at this point. We're just at the beginning of this. So we're going to do this again. Shoulders pull to the heels, heels pull to the shoulders. Sits bones are heavy, inner thighs drop, big toes are heavy, and the inner heels are heavy. We try not to sickle to the outside of the foot or let the knees go wide, because this might feel like a bridge, but it is not. So we want to keep the knees parallel, the inner thighs rolling inward, the sits bones heavy, the diaphragm heavy, the shoulders heavy. And I'm literally dragging my heels towards my pelvis. If your hamstrings are cramping at this point, congratulations, they're working. While it sucks, hamstring cramps can be very uncomfortable. 2 things, maybe 3, drink more water. Maybe you have, there could be a little magnesium deficiency, and they're just not there yet. They're not quite strong enough to do this. So what you can do is to prevent the cramp or lessen it, you could walk your feet a little further away from your pelvis. Closed feet can sometimes compensate, but they can also sometimes make this much harder because your hamstrings are already at a really big angle. So we're going to do this one more time. All right, so sits bones are heavy, ribs are heavy, shoulders are heavy. You're pulling the shoulders to the heels, big toes are heavy, and you're going to lift up. And my knees are shifting literally towards my second and third toe. So the front body is elongating as my back body is contracting. I am pulling myself with my feet, my arms, my shoulders, and partially my ribs into the earth. Pulling is not a lot. We're not doing enough pulling in our daily life. So use this part to pull. And then you can play around with lifting the pelvis a little higher, but drop your sits bones, stick your butt up. Don't let your butt lift and tuck. We want to keep that slide forward tilt. A little bit iliacus working here still. And then lower carefully down. Walk your feet close together. You're going to straighten the right leg almost all the way. So straightening meaning we don't want to jam our knee down into the mat. We want to have about 6 inches underneath or 8 inches underneath our knee joint. We're going to, I don't know, did I say walk the feet close together? Walk your feet close together so they're right in the middle of you. Right heel reaches out. We're going to turn both legs in. That's a thought and a small engagement. We're going to pull the arms down into the mat. You're going to dig your right heel down into the mat and lift your pelvis up. Now, your pelvis might not lift as high as before. Doesn't matter. Your butt could still be touching the mat. You want to think, my right hip is as high as my left hip. As I'm pulling my right heel towards my hip, there's a big internal spiral in my thigh bone, and I am just staying here in this split bridge. Pull the shoulders down into the mat, and then lower everything down. Switching sides, feet back close together, left leg reaches out. I'm going to have a slight bend under this knee. Again, this is very important that you're not locking your knee here. I just locked it and boom, I heard it crack. So that's always my little reminder.
you just extended your knee too much. You're going to turn your leg in. You're going to flex that left foot a lot, and you're going to lift your pelvis up. My ribs are heavy, so I want to try and hang my diaphragm back. You can see that. Don't turn your head though. Watch it later again. Let the inner thighs turn in. My sits bones are heavy. Even if you think, oh, I can't even stick my butt up more, try stick it out more. This is a hip flexor move while we're in almost hip extension. We're not quite there yet. And then slowly lower down. All right, we're adding on. Going back to the split bridge with the right leg straight-ish, 6 inches underneath your knee. My arms pulling down into the mat. I'm going to remove my towel here because it just feels better to me. You're going to push your arms slightly into the mat. Shoulders are heavy, ribs are heavy, sits bones are heavy. I'm going to pull my right heel and my left foot down into the earth. I'm going to shift now more weight onto my left hip. So my pelvis is even moving a little bit out to the left, sassy left hip. And then I'm slowly floating my right leg up. Flex that foot, keep the knee bent. You're going to straighten that leg up to the ceiling. Watching out for the ribs, drop them down. I'm reaching my right foot. Now I'm setting my right heel on top, above my left kneecap. And I'm gently tractioning that left leg a little bit more forward. My arms are active. My ribs are dropping. I'm reaching the right leg back up, and I'm going to lower it down. Now, if you need to lower down, lower down. If you don't, keep the pelvis lifted. Extend your left leg. Legs roll in. Ribs are heavy. Big toe is working on the right foot. First, drag everything, heels to shoulders, shoulders to heels, and then shift the pelvis slightly to the right. So you're preparing your right outer hip to take the load. Slowly floating that left leg up, flexing the foot, bending the knee. Do not attempt a straight knee here, especially if it hurts the back of your leg. You can bend that knee quite a bit. Energetically, you can think about reaching that foot away. That will already get your leg. Now, putting the left heel on top, above the right kneecap, traction it forward, let the ribs be heavy. Use the right big toe. Watch how the right knee wants to go out to the right. Don't let it go out. Keep it very much in midline. Taking the left foot back up, flex it, keep it slightly bent, lower the foot down, and lower your pelvis. Woo! All right, so let's do a little hip rehab maybe. Well, I consider all of this kind of hip rehab, but this is one of my favorite hip resets. You're going to, if you remove the pillow from underneath your head, put it back. Kind of just nicer to have a little lift here. So what we're going to do is we're going into this frog-like position. We're going to have the heels together and the toes apart. And first, just kind of let everything go slack. So letting your knees fall apart and just see, you might feel there is a stretch in your inner thighs. And that would definitely be a clue that your inner thighs are too much holding your leg. So if you walk around externally rotate, you sit externally rotate, your inner thighs, it's like the hamstrings or like the quads, they're just holding that thigh bone in the hip socket somehow. This is probably not technical, but I hope you get the idea. So what we're going to do here is we're not going to stretch the inner thighs, but you're going to engage. So we're going for an anterior tilt. So I'm sticking my butt out. I'm going to soften my ribs back into the mat. I'm going to pull my feet down into the mat, and you should start to feel some activation behind the inner thigh, hamstrings, and then I'm going to internally rotate my legs. Say what? So we're abducting, we're pulling the knees apart, we're internally rotating the legs, we're digging the feet down into the mat, we're dropping the sits bones and the ribs. So at this point, you should be feeling quite a bit something all below your belly button. My sits bones are heavy, my legs draw internally, my knees pull apart, my feet are active, they're flexed, they're dorsiflexed. We do not point here. We're stabilizing the knee. My ribs are heavy. And if you feel a stretch in your inner thighs, pick up your knees a little bit, tiny bit. Engage your inner thighs and make sure your inner and your outer thighs are actively working equally. Nothing should be dominating anything here. Everything should be just working. Now, we'll take 2 more breaths. You're going to even add a isometric, so no movement, pulling apart of the feet. So now you can find your hamstrings, more lateral hamstrings, and then slowly release. Take the pillow away if you took it away for your bridge before, or lessen it. And now, going back into the engaged form, we're going to now morph this bridge. So my sits bones are heavy, my ribs are heavy, my shoulders are heavy. I'm pulling my knees apart, and I'm lifting my pelvis up tiny bit. My inner thighs are still rotating towards the floor. My feet are very active. And now, very carefully, listen up. I'm moving my knees and my feet together. So they all come back to parallel. My inner thighs are dropping, my sits bones are heavy, my shoulders are working and pulling to my heels pull to my shoulders, my ribs are heavy. Hold out there for another breath or 2. Hopefully your inner hamstrings, your medial hamstrings are talking, and lower all the way down. Okay, so I would assume your hamstrings are quite active. Let's go to the side. This is one of my favorite exercises. It's not just hamstrings, but it's glutes and hamstrings. I mean, the bridge was also, they're all connected. I just thought hamstrings might be a catchier title. All right, so I'm going to stick my butt out. I'm going to soften my ribs. This is a bit fetal up here. Down here, I don't want fetal. I want my knees to be fairly away from my rib cage, and my knees are aligned. This is, I think it's probably the most favorite exercise that I have, if there's such a thing. So we're going to try and stack our hips. If your top knee is not aligned with the bottom knee, you're probably not in good hip alignment. Another thing is you can put your hand underneath your lowest ribs on the underside and find a little mouse house. If you find that mouse house, you should also find a little bit of engagement in your abdominals. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lift this top leg up, and we're going to lower it down. So this is now talking more to the outside gluteus medius and lower down. We're going to need this later, lifting up. Well, you need it every day, but we'll practice it now. Now, one more time. The idea is my thigh bone is dropping down into the hip socket. It's not about my hip picking up my leg. I hope you can tell the difference here. You can see it on the wrinkles in my shirt. So my leg gets lifted by this muscle here, right here where my buttocks and my thigh meet, contracting. I'm going to go slow, because even when I lower the leg, I would like to keep engagement here. So it's not about lifting and then just dropping. The slower you go here, the more precise you work, the bigger the payoff. So here we go. This was already 10 probably. I'm going to lift my leg, and I'm going to straighten the leg. And as I straighten the leg, I'm going to let that leg turn in. Since we talked about that we're all kind of here, more likely, we want to exercise. We want to pull that thigh bone more internally and let it drop down into the hip. bend and lower. We're going to lift, and we're going to rotate the leg. We're going to reach the heel away. It's not about straightening that knee. Try not to. Go 98% straight. See how that feels and be happy with somewhat of a bend in your knee. You're going to reach. Now, checking in, how much work is happening for you in your foot or in your shin or in your knee possibly, or in your shoulder. That's a common one that don't go like this all of a sudden. So turning the leg in, and then once keep the leg kind of out there for a moment and just really think about, I'm pulling my thigh bone down, up into my hip joint. I'm reaching my foot away. This is what we would call counter tension. It's oppositional reach. Your leg should be starting to really talk to you here. Bend and lower. We're going to do one last thing here. We're going to do little circles. So you did the assisted circles with your strap, and now we're going to circle the leg. Go slow. We're going to lift. We're going to pull the thigh bone back, and you want to really think about the thigh bone pulling back right underneath your butt. Put your hand right where your butt and leg meet, and that you should feel a little bit of an engagement into your finger. The muscles start to harden there, and pull that thigh bone back. Here we go. Lift, pulling back, lower, bring it forward. Can you do this without moving your rib cage? You have a little mouse house underneath, 2 more circles. You can even put your hand on your buttocks, on your glute, and feel. You should feel glute engagement, hopefully. If you don't, one big thing could be a rib cage. If we're here and super extended in our ribs, your glute doesn't even have to do a thing. So let's do 5 quick circles the other way, because my glutes are burning. And bend and lower down. So, hallelujah, this whole side should be really, really activated. All right, let's go to the other side. I'll just flip over. So making sure I have a little roundedness in the upper back, but you should be able to see your knees. If you're here, that's too much extension probably in your spine. So going a little fetal on the upper body is absolutely fine and great, just for the purpose of this exercise right now. So we're going to make sure our knees are parallel here. My top hip is in line with my bottom hip, and my ribs are slightly lifted. So again, finding a little mouse house. We'd want, if you have the luxury of being in front of a mirror, something that shows you that you're working not from the right place, is if your shirt wrinkles here. So keeping the shirt from wrinkling. Here we go. So I'm going to use this part right outside my hip where my thigh bone and my pelvis meet, and that's what's contracting. Now, here's my lazier knee. So I want to try and pick up the leg, knee, shin, foot. I don't want to do this yet, right? It's knee, shin, foot. Foot can be slightly flexed. And checking in, are my ribs and my kidneys still going back in space? The weird thing is about our spine, well, I don't know if it's weird. It's actually not weird. We have 24 vertebrae, right? That's 12 joints right there. So there's a lot of option for movement. For the purpose of this exercise right now, to really strengthen the gluteus medius, that outer hip muscle, we don't want the spine to move. And if your spine moves, and I'm going to show quite bad version here, this muscle doesn't have to do it. That's the bizarre thing. So the more stability I find in my spine,
the more work the joint that I'm targeting has to, the muscles around that joint have to come up with work. Okay, here we go. We're going to straighten. We're going to turn the leg. Really turn that knee. Your heel is higher than your toes. You're going to bend the knee and lower. We're going to lift and we're going to turn the leg. Reaching the heel, keep the diaphragm back. Checking in. You probably, and I know it because my spine does it too. Lifting, reaching and turning. Your glutes should be activating, and here we're activating them in an elongated way. It's not our typical externally rotated hip. They have to show up way differently than an external rotation. Turning the leg, and we'll do one more time. Hopefully you can feel your glute. And here we go. We're going to do our little circles. Now, watching out, we can do circles from our spine. We want to not use our spine for this. You can put your hand on your butt, and every time, in the perfect roll of unicorns, every time your leg goes slightly back, it's not hyperextension. It's just about extension here. Your leg doesn't have to be that far back because then I have to use my spine for it. Hope you can tell that. My leg only goes from flexion into extension, so it's very small. Turning in the hip socket right here, and then reverse your circle. Thigh bone goes back, thigh bone goes back, but as I pull my thigh bone back, I'm also keeping my kidneys back. And if you're doing it really, really well, your butt is on fire. Bend your knee. No, don't be a hero. We're gonna actually do some abs right now. All right, so everybody's giving all good. My goodness, 52 minutes. I think we should be moving on to something standing, and then I will have a bit of an ab blast class. If you're in New York, you can do it live with me after work, hopefully. All right, so let's coming up to standing. And we're gonna come back and kind of check in. I have to say, I feel a lot of support right now from my back chain. My glutes are active, my hamstrings are slightly active, and my connection to the floor has really, really improved. And so hopefully you can feel that too. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go back into that first thing we did. I think it was the first thing. So we're gonna go into our forward bend, and this is something we do in Pilates. That's spine stretch forward, or washerwoman, or gosh, many exercises where we're flexing our spine, but it's not about rounding my spine. I hope you can see this here, like overly rounding. What I'm trying to do is I'm going to flex my hip. I'm going to stick my butt out, so that's some iliacus work, that's hip flexor work. We're going to turn the legs in, big toes are heavy, and I'm going to drop my head. And all we're going to do here is now, we're going to do little pulses. So you can either have your hands on the floor. Again, your knees could be as bent as you want them to be. The more available your hamstrings are, the higher up you could be. Or you can take your hands off the floor. And what I really like is to put my hands on my kidneys. And that's a big reminder, lowest ribs, kidneys, for me to pick up my kidneys. So, because we all haven't met anybody yet who doesn't like to actually extend their lumbar spine, even in a forward bend, where your lumbar spine should be slightly, moderately flexed. So reminding yourself of that lumbar kidney lift. It's very small, yet profound. If you get it, you can feel your legs more. You can feel your abdominals more. And hey, what's wrong with that one, right? Slowly, keeping your knees bent, keeping your head heavy. Try not to tuck your pelvis. I'm keeping my sits bones slightly backward as my hamstrings pick me up. Okay, so hopefully that already felt quite a bit different from the first time. So here we go. Now we're going to challenge this. And I'm going to face this way, face you first, and then I will show my side so you can really see what happens to the spine. So what we're going to do is this is an asymmetrical roll down, squat-ish. There's no name to this exercise. It's an asymmetrical squat, let's say that. So my front foot is maybe slightly internally rotated, so you don't want it here. That's too much. So I want it slightly internally rotated. My knee, the center of my knee, and my second and third toe are in alignment, all the way up to my hip socket, really. That's where we want to be here. My back foot will be turned out now. I'm only on the toes of my back foot. I'm going to bend the knees. So this is already quite nice. Now we're talking whole leg, quads, hamstrings, glutes, outer hip, right? It's all working. Make sure your right big toe is not lifting up. So see what that does to my knee. My right big toe stays down to help stabilize my knee here. Okay, my butt sticks back, my kidneys lift. I'm rounding myself down. And you can go as much as you want. This is actually kind of taking a break, so you don't even have to go as far. So hovering a little bit would be a great thing. Keep your head heavy and then using all of your legs with a heavy head and a rounded kidney lifted back to come all the way up. The very last little bit, and we're not going to go all the way straight, has to be quads to straighten your leg. We're going to bend the knees. This leg goes out to the side over that second and third toe. The right knee goes straight over. Breathing here. Hello, hamstrings. Slowly coming up. Keep your pelvis fairly low. Again, the brain, one part of your lovely brain would like to get out of this as quickly as possible because this is way too hard and way too weird and way too scary to do. So let's see if we can breathe through this and calm that part of our brain down. Let's go all the way down, and I promise I'll show my side, so I'm going to turn to my side. And what we're going to do is now, we're going to do little pulses. You can have your hands on the floor. Just make sure your head is not, you're not looking to the floor. You're going to look behind you. So the neck is long. Again, if you want to, pick up your hands. Little pulses. This is something, a backward step down on the chair for your Pilates enthusiasts. You know, this is kind of part of what we're doing there. Pulsing. Both legs. Now watching out, is your right hip really crunched up and going out to the right, or can you lengthen the right side rib cage and then slowly coming up? So I want to think, instead of my right hip swinging out, I want to take that right sit bone and reach it catty corner to the left heel. All right, let's do the other side. I'm going to show my side again. So left foot forward, left knee in line with second and third toe. And you're going to turn that right foot out. You're going to slowly. So the important thing is we're not just rounding down or we're not just bending. I hope you can see that. It's a bend and a round together. Going down as far as you want. Again, even if you're here, that's fine. This is actually hard too. You know, it's all of what's available. Rather than doing it in a really weird way where your neck works hard, back off. So here we are, head is heavy, my feet pull down into the ground, and I'm coming up.
And as I'm coming up, this shirt is not very good for this. I'm trying to not come up and stand like this. So my diaphragm is still back, but my sits bones are still sticking out. Try not to tuck it. That's kind of shutting out a whole lot of things. All right, here we go again. Sits bones back, rounding your spine. Head is heavy. Slowly coming back up. Keeping the knees bent, keeping the sits bones back. All right, here comes the third, and we're gonna pulse. So maybe you can see this here. I wanna take my left hip and reach it towards my right foot. Watch out, it's gonna take your left knee possibly out to the left. You wanna really spiral the left knee in line with the second and third toe as you take your left hip behind you and back. So that's quite a bit more work here in your hammies. So here we go, we're pulsing, my head is heavy, my knees bend, my sits bones reach up, my sits bones reach down. That's really lots of pelvic and tension here. Bend your knees and slowly round it up. And here we are. All right. I can't believe this was an hour. An hour and 2 minutes. Thanks, everybody. If you liked it, give me a comment or something. Good stuff. Thanks, Monica. Yeah, so as long as this thing is going on, we all know what that thing is. I want to keep doing this. This is for my own sanity. And I've already gotten so many messages from, again, people I haven't connected to in ages. They're saying, thanks for doing this. This is kind of the highlight of my day. And, that's really touching and worth it for me. And to just keep myself in a good place. Thanks, everybody. And I hope I'll see you soon. Next class scheduled Wednesday, 3:30 Mountain Time. And I hope I'll talk to you soon. Oh, thanks, Jan. Hips and hamstrings feel great. Woo! All right, so we'll have a little bit of an ab focus. But you all know, and Jen, you're a Pilates instructor, so you know it's never always just one thing. So we'll talk to other things too. I'm glad. Thanks for joining, and stay sane. Love you. Bye.